Malign, Portents, to end the Everwinter. Frostlord Beowulf sat in the saddle of his stone horn, Mjorn, scowling as he watched a prophecy in its death throes. He had led his tribe deep into the realm of death. He had cut a swathe through the underworlds. Mortals and monsters alike had felt his warriors bite. Legions of corpses lay gnawed and frozen in his wake, all in service to the voice that howled in his dreams. Beowulf had the power to end the Everwinter. The voice told him, night after night, roaring and bellowing like the gales through the mountain passes. He would lead his Ogres and their mighty beasts to the very heart of the Deadlands, and there feast upon the carcass god in his black city of night. So it was foretold. Victory had followed victory until today. Here, on this grey tundra, beneath the gaze of basalt statues the size of castles, defeat threatened. The ice winds blew, driving sheets of snow across the battlefield, but the enemy's fire flared and roared in response. Humans and elves, weak flesh, all of them, but in huge numbers and armed with fire sticks aplenty. Beowulf could have bypassed this weak flesh army, but that would have made him weak flesh himself. No, he was compelled to destroy and devour all that stood in his way. He stood in his stirrups, sweeping his gaze across the milling Ogre beast riders that surrounded him. They had rallied around their Frost Lord after being driven back from the heights for a second time. Many were wounded, wild-eyed with hunger and fury. Their steeds prowled and snarled, Mournfangs snapping at thundertusks, which gave subsonic rumbles of anger. Stonehorns stomped, threatening to pull away from their master's control and rampage. What had been a mighty hunt was now a ragged band of raiders, more than half their number gone, morale crumbling. It would not do. Beowulf sucked in a deep breath of icy air and let out a ferocious bellow. "We are the winter that ends the winter," he roared. "We are the avalanche. We will feast upon the carcass of a god and end the Everwinter. Do you doubt?" His warriors roared back at him, shaking their heads and gnashing their teeth. The Frost Lord kicked his heels into his steed's flanks and lowered his gallow-bone lance. Bjorn's hooves bit deep as the stone horn propelled himself uphill. The ground shook and the winds howled as the last of Beowulf's tribe gave a mighty cry and followed their Frost Lord into the charge. Projectiles whipped around Beowulf. Explosions lit the slopes as the enemy's fire weapons spoke. Ogres and beast were torn apart. Still, he drove his charge home, and the howling of the dream voice melded with his own war cry as he crashed into the enemy lines. It took long moments of slaughter and bloodshed before he realized that he fought alone. The last of his tribe, surrounded, outnumbered, doomed. Beowulf hawked and spat. "This is for prophecy," he snarled in disgust, moments before a cannonball took his head from his neck. Captain Hemsler blew out a breath through his moustache as the last Ogre beast rider fell. As the din of shooting stopped, an eerie quiet settled. None of Hemsler's surviving soldiers cheered. They looked at each other, uneasily, talking quietly and checking over their dwindling ammunition supplies. The icy winds moaned, and the flurries of snow continued to fall. Already, the carcasses of ogre and beast were vanishing beneath the white blanket, indistinct carrion mounds. "Well, that's an end to that, then, hey, Lechtrin?" said Hemsler, glancing at the elven lawmaster that accompanied his command. He disliked how much his question came out sounding like an entreaty. "I do not know, Captain," said Lethrin, head tilted to one side as though listening. "The ogres are slain, yet the unnatural storm that accompanied them has not lifted." "Best redress the ranks and be away from here as quickly as we can then, eh?" said Hemsler with a forced cheer. "After all, we've a duty yet to Sigmar, and it's not exterminating ogres. I'll not have it said that we were the last army to join the march on Nagashizar." He gestured at his lieutenants, who began barking orders. Drums rattled hollowly. Signal banners waved. "I must concur, Captain," said Lethrin. "There is something disquieting at work here. The sooner we depart this ill-omened place, the better." Before the lawmaster finished speaking, Hemsler was overtaken by inexplicable dread. He cringed when, a moment later, the regimental scouts raised cries of alarm. "What is it?" he asked, as the soldiers milled around him, and exhausted artillery crews stood to their pieces. "Anyone? What's out there?" The snows had closed in, swirling wildly around the Free Guild positions and dropping visibility to a stone's throw. The first moans came, carrion cries, rising from beyond the grave to chill the hearts of men. Glowing shapes whipped through the snowfall, shrieking spectres and madly spiraling ghasts. Behind the spectral terrors came more corporal foes, masses of staggering corpses riddled with frostbite and, in many cases, part-eaten. They stumbled up the hill from every side, emerging from the snows with glassy eyes shining and blackened fingers grasping. They were the dead the ogres had left in their wake, all those they had reaved through and feasted upon, pursuing them to exact revenge. "Form up!" bellowed Hemsler. "Sergeants, redress to face the enemy. Artillerymen, grape shot. Fight in Sigmar's name. Fight!" To his fury, Hemsler saw that Lethrin had sunk to his knees. The elf had closed his eyes and breathed deeply. "It is too late, Captain, for the ogre slain our legion. We will march alongside them soon enough." Hemsler wheeled, looking for any sign of hope. Over the heads of his beleaguered soldiers, down amongst the ruins of the battlefield, snow-draped mounds were stirring. One by one, the ogres and their beasts stumbled back to their feet, eyes white staring orbs, maws hanging open. The dead pressed in from every side as the winds of the Everwinter screamed and howled. For a moment, Hemsler almost fancied the sound formed words. Then, the dead were upon him, moaning, clawing. His pistol barked, then fell silent.